Okay, there's my apples. Now, I ended up picking 17 kilos. There's 9 kilos here, and I need to use 5 kilos in my cider, so I've got to weigh out 5 kilos first. And these are all the apples which are damaged. All the ones which are perfect, we've put to dry upstairs because we'll eat those through the winter. But these are all the ones which have got a bit of damage on them. You'll notice that they're in water. I've had them soaking for 2 days, and that will get any of the bugs out that's decided to live inside them. And there will be a few. Okay, if I put this one on top, it goes to 5 kilos, but it's like playing apple Jenga, and they all fall off. So just trust me on that. I've got 5 kilos of apples there. So there's my apples. And now it's simply a case of chopping them down and popping them into the big saucepan which is behind. I'm going to cut them into quarters to try and get as many in the pan as possible. Any that have got really bad bits on, like this one here, I'm going to cut most of the bad off. A little bit's not going to hurt, but I'll try and not put too much bad stuff in like that. That's for the bin. Then you've got a nice one like this, and that makes 4 nice quarters. Try not to stab yourself with the knife when you do it. And do this as quickly as possible because the apple goes brown incredibly quickly. And I'm trying to avoid that happening. Pips are going in, skins going in, stalks are going in. It's all going in. Don't you worry about that. I'll worry about that later. Right now, all this goes in the pan together, and obviously getting rid of stuff like that. There you go. Is good. Still got a few to go, but that's my first pan full. So I'm just going to add into this pan about half a litre of spring water, maybe a bit more actually. Let's make a litre. I don't want to put too much in, but what I want to try and do is to steam this rather than just boil it. I want the steam to soften the apples, and believe it or not, apple is quite a hard fruit, but in steam it softens really easily. Once it starts to make steam, that whole pan will go in 10-15 minutes. So I'm just going to pop the heat on low, and I'm just going to leave this now and carry on with the rest of my apples. So I've got my second pan of apples on the go there. Just over half a litre of water in. And again, I'll pop the heat on and then turn it down low. Pop the lid on. The trick now is not to forget that these are there, because if I do, they'll boil over, and I've found that out through experience. I'll be back shortly. Okay, 30 minutes later, as you can see, nicely disintegrated. Heat off, and look how easily that mushes, like a charm. So that great big full pan of apples is reduced to less than half a pan. Turn the other pan off. A bit hot. Let's get them all in one pan. And I'm just going to mash and reduce and mash and reduce. So easy. That's it for now. I'm going to let this cool right down so it's properly cold before moving on to the next step. See you in a bit. Probably a few hours. It's a good few hours later, and as you can see, this has cooled down nicely. No more steam coming off. So now that is going to be pushed through the sieve, which is why I didn't bother about taking the cores and the pips and everything out, because they will be kept inside the sieve. So it's simply a case of transferring it from pan to sieve with the jug and then pushing it through the sieve with the wooden spoon. I'll demonstrate it a little bit, but obviously it's a long, drawn out, boring process. You only need to see a little bit. So I take my jug, fill it with apple pulp, drop it into the sieve. I'll do 2 jugs per sieve. That'll do to start with. You can see that the liquid already starts to come through. But we're going to follow that with some solidish stuff as well, some pulp. If I simply just do circles with the wooden spoon in the sieve, it starts to push through the pulp. And this is exactly the same process for making applesauce, except for when you make it with applesauce, you push it through and then you add sugar to it in the pan and bring it to the boil. But for cider, I'm going to put the pulp through the sieve, then add it into the fermenting vessel, then I'm going to add melted sugar in water to the fermenting vessel. It's quite an arm-intensive process. You can see what comes through the sieve. Yeah, it's a good workout, definitely. You feel it in your arm afterwards. So there's the pulpy stuff on the outside. That's what it looks like in the pan. All the bits that you don't want, the bits of skin, the bits of seeds, stalks, etc., stay in here, and that will become garden fertiliser. I've got a long way to go, so I'll be back to you when it's done. And that's the net result. 1 empty pot, 1 pot full of apple rubbish, which is going to become garden fertiliser, and a lot of apple puree. Okay, so this is going to be a very sediment heavy cider. Everything that you can see there, which is a solid, is going to end up being sediment stroke trub at the top and then eventually at the bottom of the fermenting vessel, which is why I'm using the big 30 litre fermenter today. I'm probably still going to end up racking this off into demijohns afterwards just to separate it from all this. But this will pack it, absolutely pack it with flavour. Okay, next up, you can see that I've got a small amount of brewing sugar just here. Dextrose monohydrate. When I say a small amount, I've got 25 kilos. I'm going to use about 4.5 kilos of this. So this pink cup holds 413 grams. So I'm going to put about 10 or 11 of these into this pan. I've ended up with 5 kilos, or just under 5 kilos, probably about 4.8 kilos of brew sugar in the pan. It's going to be quite challenging to deal with. I normally match a kilo of fruit to a kilo of sugar when I'm making wines, so I'm going to go the same way today with this cider. So my next step is to very, very delicately pour some water into this sugar. The sugar actually dissolves pretty easily, but I just need to be very gentle and let the water work its way into it. If I'd been sensible, I would have done half of this amount and done it twice, but I'm trying to get it done. Got to be at work in half an hour. There, it's going through now. I'm using spring water incidentally because where I live in Leeds, the tap water is just a bit chlorine-y. And that's why I'm using brew sugar as well, because chlorine tap water and normal sugar sometimes give you brews that homebrew flavour, and I'm trying to avoid that homebrew flavour. I want it to taste like something nice that people will enjoy. So that's why I'm using brew sugar and spring water. And it's also why I'm going to use Harris Pure Brew when it comes to putting this together. And I'll explain a bit more about that when I get to it. So it looks like global warming, but this is all now starting to come together okay. I just need to keep adding the water to it. I'm just leaving the water now to take up all the airspace before coming back to it. Just have a look. There's no heat on this yet. This is just the sugar and the spring water. It feels a bit like a sorbet, and it actually looks like one. So I'm just working the water into the sugar. Yeah, if you're going to do this at home, I recommend either using a pot which is double the size of this one, or doing half of the amount and doing it twice. Like I said, I was being impatient. As my wife would say, less is more. Okay, that feels quite nice and loose now, so I'm going to add a little bit more water. So one of the nice things about brew sugar is it does dissolve fairly easily. What I'm going to do now is add some heat. I do not want to boil this by any means. I just want to warm it a little bit, because with heat it dissolves even quicker. So and then I want to turn that down so it's not roaring. And probably within 15-20 minutes that should hopefully go clear. I'll need to keep stirring it. Just a 10-minute update, and this is really, really loose now. Quite buoyant. This won't take very long to dissolve at all. So because of the sheer quantity of sugar that's in there, I've had to leave this on for quite a bit, and the temperature has come up probably into the 50s, 60s. I'm talking about Celsius. So I'm going to now turn this off completely. And I'm going to come back to this when it's cooled back down to room temperature, because I don't want to put anything that's remotely hot into my fermenting vessel because it's a plastic one. So I'll be back in a couple of hours. Right, a couple of hours later, quick stint in the office. Now I'm back and it's time to put this all together. So today's fermentation vessel of choice is this Kegland 30 litre fermenter. I think it's 30 litres, yep. I've only used it once before to make a tomato paste wash, but I'm going to be using that today to make this cider. Here's the sugar water. Look how clear it is. Don't worry about the floaty stuff on top. It's just a bit of apple from when I had the apple in there before the sugar water. And here is my apple puree. So other ingredients to go in this now will be some Harris Pure Brew, Wilco Pectolase, and my yeast of choice today is going to be Lalvin ICV D47. The Pure Brew contains a Camden tablet and yeast nutrient, and it basically stops your homebrew, or helps to stop your homebrew from tasting like homebrew. Fingers crossed. The pectolase will help this to clear, because when you boil through, it often leaves a haze in the brew. And the Lalvin D47 yeast is rocking. Okay, I'm going to begin by lining my fermenting vessel with 5 litres of spring water. That was nice. And then I'm going to add some sugar water. I'm transferring my sugar water with a jug. It's going to be a drippy, messy, sticky process. There'll be some cleaning up afterwards. If I try and pour it in out of the big pan, there's so much in there, it's just going to go everywhere. Okay, that's half my sugar water in. Let's get some apples in there. So I've got my big pan of apples, my wok of apples on the sink. Messy. Nobody said it was a pretty job, and it ain't a pretty job. But you know what? If this works out, the end results will be worth it. There's something very satisfying about making your own 30 litres of cider, maybe a bit less than 30 litres, from apples out of your own garden. That is pretty satisfying. Before I go any further, let's get the pectolase in. I've probably not got quite enough here. I usually put 1 teaspoon in a 1 gallon demijohn, a 5 litre. I've probably got the equivalent in here of 3 or 4 teaspoons, but I'm just going to shove the lot in. Now let's get another 5 litres of spring water in. Spring water's rocking. Right, lovely job. Sugar water. Now because I've only got half a pan left, let's risk it. Let's risk it like brisket. Oh, just a bit on the outside. And in it goes. Beautiful. Apples. Get all that lovely apple juice in there. Come on. Waste not, bloody want that. Right, smashing. Super smashing, great, lovely. Stick a bit more spring water in. Try and rinse the top a bit because it's got a bit of apple on it. Now when this starts to ferment, it's going to form a krausen. A krausen is the big foamy head that you get on top. And because of the amount of apple flesh in here, this is going to form a big krausen. Now my hope is that because the area is spread so wide, that the krausen won't rise too high. So I've currently got this on 23 litres. I'm going to push it to 28 litres. I'm not going to go for the full 30 because I think I'm probably tempting fate if I do. But I'm going to put another bit more spring water in here. So another 5 litre vessel of spring water. Starting to splash out at me now. And that is 28 litres. I'm not going to fill it anymore. I'm already quite concerned it's probably going to erupt. If it does, it's not a problem. I can just clean it and get back to it. Slightly more problematic than a demijohn, but you know, it's not the end of the world. Although it will be if my missus sees it. I'm just going to give it all a big stir around now with a big plastic spoon. I better attempt to take the gravity. I'm just going to have to drop my hydrometer in, hope for the best. Boing. I am starting off with an original gravity of 1.064 1064. So I've got my Harris Pure Brew to go in. Put the powder first. So a nice heaped teaspoonful to start with, and then a smaller level teaspoonful afterwards. And this should feed the yeast. I'm not quite sure how much to put in really. It just says on the thing, when adding the yeast, crush 1 tablet into the beer together with 1 spoonful of the powder. Okay, now but it doesn't say for what size fermenting vessel. So maybe I've put too much yeast nutrient in. Hopefully that's not a bad thing. As for the tablets, I'm not going to risk putting more than 1 tablet in. So these are the Camden tablets. And I'm simply going to crush the tablet between 2 teaspoons above the brew. And then let it powder in. That's it, that's gone nicely. Now my yeast. So I would normally add a good 1.5 to 2 teaspoonfuls per gallon. So I'm going to reckon that I've got in here probably the equivalent of 2.5 teaspoonfuls. So that's in. And then I've got a fresh packet just here. So I'm going to add 3 rounded teaspoonfuls from this packet. 1, 2, 3. And let's have 1 for good luck. There we go, that should be enough. So back to my big spoon, let's get all this stirred in. So this yeast won't take very long to activate. It's going to be very, very happy with what it finds in there. It is a very syrupy, sugary and fruity combination. So it's time to put the fermenting vessel together. So this sits there. It's held in place with this, which I need to get on evenly so it goes down tightly and seals. I'm sweating. It's 25 out at the minute, September, bonkers. Let's just give this a little swishel around the inside to try and get the bits of apple off that are stuck to the roof. There we go, that's worked. Now the airlock that comes with this isn't great. It sits there, but it doesn't really seal. It's not airtight, and what I had to do before was get some blue tack to wrap around it so it was airtight, so I'm going to do that right now. Okay, I'm just putting this on like a scarf. Okay, that hopefully will keep it airtight. It's not the best airlock, this, I must admit. I do prefer the proper bubble as the traditional ones. Right, that's as good as it gets for now. I'm going to leave this on here for a couple of hours and I'm going to see if a krausen starts to form and what happens. So the next film will be once fermentation has begun. So the cleanup operation is complete, and I want to report that within 20 minutes of me completing this and putting the top on, the first bubble has just appeared and another one has just appeared in the airlock. Great stuff. You can already see separation at the top and at the bottom. If I stand back you can see the light and dark. I will end up with approximately 10 litres of sediment or trub, which I may or may not filter, and if I'm lucky I'll get 20 litres of cider out of this, which would be the equivalent of the water that I put in. So I did put 20 litres of water in, along with 5 kilos of pureed apple and 5 kilos of brewing sugar. So let's see what happens. I'll report back in a little while. I think it's fair to say that it's fermenting in earnest. So this is 6 hours later. The krausen has barely moved above the 28 litre mark. It's spread out rather than risen so far. I'm not out of the woods yet because the next 48 hours are crucial, but I'll keep you updated. So this is just 4 days later. A quick update to show you where we are. It's going nicely. The krausen's settled right back down. I don't foresee any problems with this. So the next film that you see from me will be wrecking off into demijohns in a few weeks' time. I'll see you then. Greetings from the utility room, folks. It's my apple cider racking day. Let's have a look at it. So here it is. It's on the 28 litre mark in the fermenting vessel, and I've got up to 9 litres or slightly more than 9 litres of trub. So I've got just under 20 litres of cider, which is not too bad in terms of clarity. I put my hand at the other side. I don't know if you can see anything. You can just about see a little bit through it. And this is a wide vessel. So I'm quite pleased with how clear it is, and it will clear more in the demijohns. As for all this, well, this is waste, and I could try and filter it, but I don't think I'm going to bother. So today I'm going to be racking off into demijohns. It's going to be quite a tricky process and not the easiest one to film, so I'll just have to do what I can. I'm not going to undo all this. I'm just going to unscrew this here, and then you can see down that I should be able to get the siphoning tube through that. Unfortunately, I've got no grip to hold this one in place today because I'm using a wider tube. So I hope I'm in the frame. I've had to do sort of a wide shot from a distance. Let's just see what happens now. I'm going to try and hold this as best I can, but it's really going to be difficult. At this point in time, I've got the siphoning tube above the line of the sediment. It will drop down as I go through this. And obviously this is a thick tube, so it's going to come out pretty quick. Fingers crossed. Yeah, like I said, it's shooting out. So I'm going to get 4 demijohns, hopefully. And I've got them in a plastic box in case of spillage. So this really is a fast and furious process. It's going all over the place. And into the next demijohn. Yeah, it's flying out of here. And then on to the next one. Well, I'm making a good mess anyway. I'm sure my wife will thank me. Right, I'm getting some really trubby stuff coming through now. I'm going to let it come through until this demijohn's full. I'm going to call it a day at that. God, that was messy. And I've got cider everywhere. My wife's going to kill me. Okay, after a bit of a clean-up operation, this is what I've got. So I've got one which is nice and clear, one which is almost nice and clear with a bit of trub, one which isn't that clear with a fair bit of trub, and then one that's not that clear with even more trub. So it goes like best to worst. Now I'm not worried because these will settle and clear, but it does mean that when I come to take the cider out of this one and this one, that I'm not going to get a full demijohn's worth. Like with these two, I probably will. So I'm probably looking at 6, 7 50ml bottles from each of those two, 4 from that one and 5 from that one. That's what I'm guessing. Okay, so these were in the large fermenter for 15 days. I'm now going to leave them in these demijohns to clear for about another week or so before I start to look at bottling. But I'm not going to leave them all as apple ciders. I'm going to flavour these two here, the clearer two, and I'm going to leave the cloudier ones at the back as apple ciders. So my clearest one I am going to flavour with MyProtein Strawberry Flavdrops. I'm going to add 3 full pipettes into the demijohn. And that will be sufficient to give that a nice strawberry flavour. I'm going to flavour my next clearest one with this Mangrove Jack's Passionfruit flavour. Now I don't have the luxury of a pipette, but I've used this a few times and I pretty much know what to put in, so I'm just going to add that much. And that will be enough now to give that a nice passionfruit flavour. And there they all are. So the next film you see from me will probably be in a week or so's time when I start to bottle these. So I'll catch you then. Good morning from the kitchen, folks. Today I'm going to be bottling my strawberry and passionfruit flavour ciders. Let's have a look at them. So here they are. They've been racked for a week now and they're nice and clear. I don't think they're getting any extra benefit from being in here. I think I can just pop them into the bottles now. So before I begin, I need to prime the bottles, and that means I need to add some sugar. So this is a generous heaped teaspoon, and that will guarantee me a sparkle, hopefully. So the sugar will be eaten by any yeast which is still in suspension in there, and there will be yeast in there still. And when they eat that sugar, it will cause a very tiny fermentation, and that will also create carbon dioxide, CO2, and the CO2 will build up pressure, and that's what gives it a sparkle. So a generous one of these in each 750ml, and then less in the smaller bottles. So then it's bung out, siphoning tube in. I'm holding the tube steady with this clip. The bottom of it is in the very bottom of the demijohn. The first bit that comes out might be a little bit sedimenty, but that's going to go into the hydrometer tube anyway. Let's do it. Oh, I've got a right strawberry flavour then. Yeah, it's still quite dry. I don't know whether to back flavour this or not. I might do. . I'll have a taste out of the hydrometer tube and decide then. I think I'm just going to get this one. I see bubbles in the tube right about now, but there's just enough in that tube now for me to fill this bottle up. So I'm just going to take the final gravity now to work out what the alcohol by volume is. And that's sank very nicely. And the final gravity of this brew is 0.990. I need to work out the alcohol by volume, so I take the starting gravity of 1.064. I deduct from that the final gravity of 0.990, and that equals 0.074. And then I multiply this by 131.25, which gives me a final alcohol by volume of 9.7%. Decent. So I'm just going to have a little nifter because I'm not sure whether to back flavour this with some more flavour drops or not. So let's have a go. Actually, I don't think I need to, because at the minute it's a nice balance between strawberry and apple. I'm getting both flavours coming through, so I think I'm going to leave it as is. Okay, I need to get the tops on my bottles, so they're going to need bungs, that needs crown capping, and that one was nice and easy with a screw top. So I've only got the one to crown cap, and this bottle is usually alright actually, so I'm hoping I'm not going to get a big slip and make a massive mess. There we go. Capped. As for the remainder, they need bungs, and I've got the bungs softening in hot water right now. I soften them because it makes them more malleable to push in, because they can be quite stiff sometimes. And I have been wearing a glove, but I'm not wearing it today for no reason other than I forgot to get it. Anyway, that went in nicely. The glove just protects my very delicate skin. 2, 3 of the plastic bungs. That one, yeah, they all went in okay, so happy days. This one will not take one of those plastic bungs. The neck is too narrow and it's a posh one, so the posh bottles are always like that. So I have to use one of these sort of bungs. Not ideal, but it does work, and it is airtight enough for it still to build up pressure. Oh, I can't even get that one in. Right, problem, I'll have to find another one. In the meantime, I'm going to put cages on these bottles. The cages will hold the bungs in place, and they have an essential safety feature, because when the yeast eats the sugar and it creates CO2, it creates pressure, and without the cage, the bung becomes a missile. That's one done. You don't need to watch me cage all these, it's really not that exciting, so let's come back in a minute. Okay, I managed to find a smaller bung which I can just about get into this bottle. I can't push it in any further, but once the cage is in place it'll be fine. So I'm just going to rinse my bottles off, and I'm doing that because I want to label them and I don't want any sticky residue on the outside. Okay, so I've done this one. I've got to do exactly the same with the Passionfruit one. I don't need to film all that as well because you've seen me do it for this one. So we'll catch up with that shortly. As for the 2 plain apple ciders, they're still a little bit cloudy, so I'm going to leave these for another week before I look at bottling them. Okay, I'm going to call this my autumn cider, so this is my strawberry autumn cider. I've got my labels made up in the Microsoft Word template. I'm just going to print those out. So I'm just popping my labels on the bottles. I like to try and do as neat a job as I can, make them look nice, you know, take a bit of pride. And hopefully what's on the inside will be good as well. And there they are. So welcome to my conditioning room. This is just a room where I've got some temperature controlled shelves and I can leave my bottles to condition for a month or so before opening. So the conditioning process is a process whereby the yeast, which is in suspension, eats the sugar, it creates CO2, it creates pressure and fizz.
fingers crossed, but it also helps the flavour to develop. And I found that the longer you leave these, the better the flavour can be. So I used to just leave them for 2 weeks, now I leave them for at least a month. Let's have a look. So there's my ciders on my conditioning shelves. The shelves are currently on the top shelf, it's 20.4, and the bottom shelf is 20.4. I've got a thermometer on the bottom shelf, which is the coolest of the shelves, and when that drops below 19.5, it activates the plug just there, and it turns the heater on behind the shelves, and it will heat up until it reaches 20.5, so it will stay at a constant temperature between 19.5 and 20.5, which is a perfect temperature for conditioning these. So the next film that you see from me will be in about a month's time when it comes to opening the first one and tasting it. Catch you then. Good evening from the kitchen, folks. It's my autumn apple cider opening night. It's been 6 weeks in the bottle. I'm hoping I'm going to get a sparkle. I'm hoping it's going to smell nice. I'm hoping it's going to taste nice, look good in the glass, all that stuff. I don't know until I try. So I've got, you know, some moderate hopes that this is going to have a bit of life in it, but you just never know until you try, do you? So let's see. Am I going to get a tss? Yes, I got a tss. We got a bit of vapour. We got a bit of sparkle. Oh, we've got life. Oh, yes. Go on. Let's do it how they do it in Bilbao. I'm not sure what that does, but that's what I've seen them do there. Right. Oh, wow. It smells like a really strong, I mean, it is 9.7%, so it is really strong. It smells like a really strong appley dryness. Oh, wow, that's really nice. Really full-bodied. I mean, it gets all areas of your mouth. It's like covering 4 spaces at once. The flavour's really, it's quite sharp to begin with, and then it sort of like widens as it goes down. A really good apple flavour. I don't want to say strongbowish, but you know that sharpness that you get with strongbow, and I hate strongbow, by the way, but you know that sharpness that you get with it. I'm getting sort of like that. It's not the bite, but it's that sort of like, you know, like strongbow does the bow and arrow or whatever it does. Well, what's the equivalent with this one? I don't know. A couple of thumbs up. But yeah. It's very nice. It's extremely drinkable. It would be a great summer drink. I've done it at the wrong time of year, but that's when apples are available. So, they're available all year from the supermarket, obviously. But when you've got a tree, you've got to pick them when they're ready. Anyway, so this is good. I'm really happy with it. I've got the strawberry one to try and the passionfruit one to try. So they'll be next. So cheers, and I'll catch you shortly. Good evening from the kitchen, folks. I'm back with the autumn apple cider. This time, I've got the strawberry flavoured one. Is it going to be carbed? Well, you can clearly see the bung has raised. Let's hope that that means that it has carbed, and it's just not the fact that the bung wouldn't fit in the bottle properly. I do remember when I bottled this one, this was the one that I struggled finding a bung to fit in. But kind of in my mind's eye, I feel like I did get it in right. Who knows? Am I going to get a pop? That's not really a pop, is it? That was a bit pathetic. Right, let's have a look. Oh, there's carbonation though. Look, 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 look. Ooh, that's nice. You get that dryness of the apple and then like McDonald's strawberry milkshake on top of it. That is really, really good. The sweetness of the strawberry flavour really complements the apple, which is quite dry. It's ended up being somewhere between medium and medium sweet. That's really interesting, that. The last one, the one that was just apple alone, was more like medium to medium dry. This is medium to medium sweet. And it's very, very tasty. Moorish, scarily Moorish, but again, more of a summer drink. Very delicious though. It's making me think, when I do this cider next year, knowing that I won't be opening it until sort of like November and possibly December, I should flavour it with more winter spices and things, you know, that are more reminiscent of this time of year. Maybe a pumpkin spice or some mulled spices. Anyway, it's really good. I'm very happy with it. So next one is the passion fruit. Fingers crossed. Catch you then. Good evening from the kitchen, folks. It's now passion fruit flavoured autumn cider. Let's give this one a whirl. See if this one also sparkles. Also looks good, smells good, tastes good. Bit of a challenge, but let's see what we get. Okay, so the bung has raised by maybe 1 millimetre. It's a positive sign. Am I going to get a pop? That was pathetic. But I might have some bubbles. It's a mild sparkle, right? It's, how do we say it? It's effervescent. No, look. Undeniably, there is sparkle. You can't say there isn't. You can see that. It's very clear. It just wasn't fizzy. That's beautiful. Really nice. Again, the Mangrove Jack's passion fruit flavour. The sweetness of it works really well with the dryness of the apple, and the net result of this is a medium sweet cider again. It's really lovely. Another good summer drink, which I'm drinking in autumn. But hey, you know what? I'll learn from this for next year. The carbonation is delicate, but it's absolutely there. You get it in your mouth, you get it when you drink it, you can feel it. It enhances the flavour. It gives it that bit of extra sort of, you know, va-va-voom. It's nice. It's very nice. Out of the three, so there was the plain apple, strawberry and passion fruit. What was my favourite one? Gosh. I think in terms of the all-round drink itself, I'd have to say the plain apple, because it was the most carbonated and it was the most authentic cider type drink. Second place, strawberry. Third place, this one. Still like it, but I think that's the order I'd put them in. Anyway, folks, it's been a pleasure. It's been a learning curve, as always, and I hope you've enjoyed the film. I'll catch you on the next brew. Cheers.
The film that you've just watched is a Moss Home and Garden production. You can find more by going to www.mosshomeandgarden.co.uk. I'd just like to say thank you very much for supporting my YouTube channel and for watching my films. It really is very much appreciated. If you haven't already done so, please subscribe to my YouTube channel in order to receive future updates about the home and garden films which I upload. You can find my YouTube channel by going to www.mosshomeandgarden.co.uk. Please click on the red subscribe button. When you've done that, a little bell will appear. If you press that also, then you'll get future updates about the films which I upload. If you like my films, if you like my style of filming, then you might also like my travel channel, which you will find by going to youtube.com/Stuart Moss or type in www.mosstravel.tv. Again, if you could subscribe to that channel, it would be hugely appreciated. If you'd like to get Moss Home and Garden updates on Facebook, then please open Facebook and do a search for Moss Home and Garden, and you will find the page. If you like the page, then you will get future updates on there. And if you'd like to connect on Instagram for home, garden and travel photography, as well as some stories, then my username is StuMoss, STUMOSS.
If you'd like to connect on Twitter, then my username is @StuartMoss. And if you'd like to contact me about film usage or any other issue, please just email me on stewmosshomegarden@gmail.com. Once again, thank you very much for supporting my channel, for watching my films. I do appreciate it. I'd just like you all to have a great day.